So, I don't think I'm the only one in the gaming scene that thinks ports of old video games to newer consoles is pretty neat. And if you've been online as of recently, you've probably heard about a team of people porting Sonic Unleashed, an Xbox 360 era Sonic title, to PC. And by port, I don't mean something like a higher quality file you can emulate a bit better. I mean like a full-on remastered version of Sonic Unleashed. Not only is that immensely impressive and show the kind of creativity people can do when they have love for a product, but now something crazy is going to happen. Sonic Unleashed fans can finally play their game for the first ever time in their lives. And while that's all well and good, the bigger announcement, for me at least, was the reveal of someone having an entire engine that allowed you to port Xbox 360 titles into full PC games. The potential for that is already wild, considering how many of these games are not on Steam, and you have to utilize stuff like emulation for it. But that announcement also gave me an idea for a video. What Xbox 360 RPGs did I want to see ported? Now for this video, I'm just going to go over a couple of these. This isn't going to be anything big or anything, just a couple of games I think would be cool to see ported in this engine. With my one rule for this being that all of these have to be played with emulation in some way. They can't be buyable no matter what. With that said, let's quit yapping and get into the video. Okay, so I'm gonna start off this list with the one thing I want more than fucking anything in the world. Can someone, anyone who sees this, anyone out there, for the love of God, please make a port of Eternal Sonata. I don't know how many times on this channel I've mentioned it, but this game deserves so much better than it got. If you don't know what this game is, it was a title released on the Xbox 360 and PS3 that got pretty solid reviews overall, but nothing ever really happened with it afterwards because I don't think it sold all that well. And to this day, I still consider it probably the most underrated title during that era. The game has literally everything. A charmingly beautiful looking world with colorful and nice graphics, a fun cast of characters and an interesting story, and more than anything, what drew me to it was its genuinely unique combat system that takes the concept of turn-based combat and adds timers on it to create an interesting engagement system that you love getting your hands on. Even talking about it now makes me want to replay it on my PS3. It may seem like I'm going over the top about it, but trust me, I genuinely think this game could move fucking mountains if it got that port. Upscale its graphics to 1080p, add a nice little 60 FPS, maybe in a few other additions to it, and boom, return of a classic. If you watch this video and know how to code, please give this game a try and see if you can port it over. I promise you, you will not regret it. So, fun little fact about the Xbox 360. Despite having tons of games on its system, it didn't really have a whole lot of exclusives that were RPGs. It had some, sure, but there weren't really a whole lot of exclusives for it. You could find a lot more JRPGs on handhelds than you would home consoles, and hey, I get it. It was the era of the online shooter. Things like Call of Duty and Halo were dominating the charts. That's where the money was. I'm not going to fault the companies for chasing that. I will be upset about it, but I'm not going to complain any more than a lot of people already have. Plus, it would be pretty hypocritical of me as someone who grew up on Halo 3 and Reach's online multiplayer to say that those damaged the system or something like that, even if I think the quality of both those titles has dipped quite a bit since then. But you know what game hasn't dipped in quality? Lost Odyssey, an Xbox 360 exclusive RPG made by the creator of Final Fantasy himself. And you can really see it in how it plays. A lot of the old school styles that made the original Final Fantasy so good are here. If anything, it feels like a modernized take on the genre. Well, modern for the time it was released anyways. And to my shock, it's never been ported over to Steam or Epic or any sort of launcher whatsoever. I think having an upscaled version of this would be great, because, I mean, it still looks pretty great visually even now. There's some blur here and there, sure, but you get that with the 6th gen console. But it's also a title that I feel like has really been lost to time. You know, like I stated before, the era of online shooters, that stuff gets remembered a lot more than this does. So it would be really cool to see this put on PC as a way to preserve its legacy. Also because the Xenia version runs like dog shit, so it'd be nice to have a playable version of it. You know, it's still kind of shocking to me that even though it's been over a year since his passing, it's kind of hard to imagine that we're living in a world where the creative legend Akira Toriyama has passed away. The man was an icon of basically anything he was a part of. Dragon Ball, Dragon Quest, He basically raised me as a kid through episodes of Z. I have to admit, even now I get a little emotional knowing he's no longer on this earth with us. Especially since one of my personal goals was to one day meet him. He's gone. But I don't think he should ever be forgotten due to how much of an influence he was on media as a whole. From anime to video games, his mark was made. And I think a genuine way we should honor him is find a way to bring Blue Dragon to PC, a title that he had been a creative designer on, and one that hasn't really gone anywhere after it was put on 360. Yeah, sure, it had the DS sequel, but that's it. It's a shame because it's a very Toriyama style of game, even if admittedly I've only played the first couple hours as of recently. It's honestly pretty sad to think about that a piece of Toriyama's storyline is just nowhere to be found other than the 360. I genuinely hope if someone is into coding, they hear this and try to bring it over, because while he's definitely well known for stuff like Dragon Ball, Dragon Quest, and especially Chrono Trigger, I hope that his smaller contributions to gaming as a whole never get forgotten, as I truly believe they don't deserve to be overlooked. So I decided to just include both of these in the same section because, I mean, why not? I feel like giving them different spots could have made this a little more repetitive than necessary. Also, since I'm going for a short video, I wanted to knock it down to 5 instead of 6. Plus, like, it's kind of weird that these games are not on Steam yet. Hell, they're not on any launcher in general as of right now. Sure, I've heard from the people who've played this franchise that Fable isn't some high-grade masterpiece or anything like that. But even then, from what I've heard, they're held in pretty high regard by the Xbox community for being solid enough RPGs on a console that didn't really go to bat for that genre. Admittedly, I've heard the jokes about them being budget Kingdom Hearts, but it would be kind of nice to see a couple of Fable fans, or just RPG fans in general, put these two forgotten titles on PC. I'd love to be able to play the entire trilogy since I've only got the anniversary one. Also, there's a new one coming out in about a year or so, and while personally I don't think it looks really all that great, the combat just kind of looks like budget Witcher 3, but I do wish the lead up to it would have brought these two titles to Steam. But from the looks of it, I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm hoping porters can do it for me and many of the other Fable fans who want to see this trilogy all in one place again. So in comparison to all of the other games that I've talked about on this list so far, where I at least had some experience in the game itself or in the series, this is the one title on the list I have not touched at all. Hell, it's also the only title that I think has ever been on Steam. Last Remnant is a fascinating thing to think about, because a long time ago I had seen it on Steam and I had planned to get it myself, only to learn it had one day gotten delisted a while back, with no explanation as to why. From what I understand, it's just gone. And since Steam decided to get rid of it, you know, I think it's high time we use that port to bring it over to people who can't buy it anymore. The game itself looks very interesting, as it seems to have a focus on comboing skills together to devastate enemies, and as someone who loves that shit in games when it's done correctly, that's half the reason I even fell in love with the Xenogears so much, was because of how cool that combat was. You know, along with pretty much everything else, because that game is a fucking masterpiece. Anyways, we're getting off track here. I really want to know how good Last Remnant is in comparison. So here's hoping that somebody decides to bring it over with a fully evolved style. If not, maybe there's always a way we can just, you know, sail the 7 seas for it. But you didn't hear that from me, though, because we're moving on to the final section. And with that, we have reached the end of the video. A pretty short one, all things considered, sure, but I wanted to get this one out before I got to one of my longer reviews. Plus, it's been swirling in my mind ever since I had learned about the engine's possibilities. So I wanted to talk about this as quickly as possible so I could focus on the next stuff. And while this whole thing was dedicated to RPGs in general, as someone who grew up with a 360, I definitely would love to see other stuff, especially some of the anime games from that time. If I learned somebody ported over stuff like Naruto the Broken Bond or Dragon Ball Raging Blast, I would give you a kiss as the anime nerd in me would jump in joy. But what about you? What games would you like to see ported over? They can be anything from RPGs to just normal games in general. Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, maybe consider hitting that like and subscribe button. We're on the road to 1K and I think we can do it this year. Hit the bell for some notifications so you can see my videos go up. And with that said, have a good day everyone, and I'll see you next time for more RPG content.